The first time that I faced the martial attack, I got completely destroyed. For this reason, I start to study some lines, and I found this one with a crazy rook sacrifice. At the beginning, I didn't understand quite well why that was working, but then I put it in some of my games, and I gained good results. So check this video. Okay, so it starts with e4, e5, knight 6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, castle, and here there are some anti-Martial lines like d3, d4, h3, or a4. I will, by the end of this video, I will also explain why these are the anti-Martial lines, but I think is easier to understand it if we first check the Martial. I will also do a video about a complete video about these lines, so feel free to check in the description. I will put the link of the playlist there. So let's go with d5, take, and take, and here c6, and d4. Here there are two choices. He can play knight f6, but then just bishop g5, and we are fine. The more critical line is bishop d6. And here we just retreat, queen h4 to put pressure on the h2 pawn. We play g3 and queen h3 and rook e4 with ideas of remaneuvering the rook on the h4 square and put pressure on the h7 pawn. So here the typical Martial move is g5. We can't take because we lose a piece with queen f5. But what we can do is propose a queen trade with queen f1. And here there are some choices for black. He can trade, he can play queen h5 or queen h6. I will talk about the trade later in this video. Let's talk about h5. Is the most common move because blacks doesn't want to pin himself. So on queen h5, we can play knight d2, and here the two most common replies and also the more reasonable ones are f5 and bishop f5. Let's see now bishop f5. On bishop f5, there is this move that is really strong, and we can play f3, sacrifice a quality. But to understand this move, we have to pause for a moment and think about the black position. The weaknesses on black side are the g5 pawn and f6 square. With this move, white wants to give away the rook to build a huge center. Plus, the e4 pawn will dislocate the knight from the d5 square and will open the diagonal for the light square bishop. So if, for example, black accept this sacrifice and plays bishop e4, we can take. And after here, there are several moves. There is knight b6, knight e7, and knight e3. So let's check every replies. With knight e7, we have a push, we have e5, and we will take control of the f6 square and of the g5 pawn. So if black defends from the fork, we can give a check or we can also take. Now let's see knight e3. On knight e3, we can propose a queen trade. So black accept because otherwise he will lose a piece, and we take back. And here there is knight c4 or g5. Let's see g5, g4. If he plays g4, we take the knight, and after pawn takes, we can play first a5 and then king f2, or also king f2 and then e5. and we are completely fine. The problem from black side is that the board is opened, so the bishop pair, our bishop pair, works really well. And this pawn will fall eventually, and not eventually, will fall for sure. And let's also count the pawn islands. We have two pawn islands, and he has three pawn island. Plus, we have a lot of so even if we gave away our rook, the rooks plays well in boards with open files. And here the only semi-open file is the F file that is open for us. So if the rook threatens something, we can always block that file with our pawns. And we can activate our pieces, and then we will be able to create a pass pawn. So now let's check knight c4. On knight c4, we can also play bishop per g5, and if black want to be greedy and take the pawn, we can also play knight h5 with ideas of knight h4 with ideas of knight f5 and bishop f6 and then checkmate. So let's say this one, maybe black wants to activate. So this one, knight f5. And on this, we have bishop f6 that already threatened mate, so maybe he has to play h5, but then we just protect. This pawn is really weak. Our rook will enter in the end in the game, so we are super fine here. And now let's check knight b6. Okay, on knight b6, what we want to do is play queen g2 or e5 with the idea of placing the queen on g2 and threaten this pawn. So on bishop e7, there is queen g2. And after, let's say, after knight d5, our idea is to remaneuver the knight via f1 to e3 to propose a knight trade. And we will have the bishop pair, a lot of pawn. This pawn is weak, and also this other pawn is weak, and we are fine. And now let's check f5. Here, the other reasonable reply for black was f5. And what we can do is place our bishop on d1 to kick away the queen. And here there are some choices like g4, queen g6, and queen h6. But if he plays g4, he will kind of lose some mobility on his structure, and the attack will be slower. So it's not so worrying, this one. If he plays instead queen g6 or queen h6 with the ideas of play f4 and open up the position, we will just retreat our rook, and when f4 comes, we will play knight e4. So let's say queen g4, rook back, and after f4, knight e4, and we are fine. We are threatening the bishop, and we are covering the g3 pawn, so we are good. And now the last line that I want to show you before talking about the anti-martial moves is queen per f1. Let's check it. Okay, on queen per f1, the ideas are always the same. So let's trade bishop f5, and we can play f3. And again, if he takes, is good for us. We can take back, and after knight b6, we can play bishop per g5, and then later on in the game, if this one, we can play e5. We are super fine. And here we will also win the rook here. So, so yeah, the only remaining question is what if black doesn't accept the sacrifice? Let's check it. Okay, let's say that black realized that taking this rook is not good for them, and plays something like knight f6. Here we can play queen g2. But we have to be careful about one detail. If he takes with the bishop, we can take back with the pawn. And we are threatening a fork. We will remaneuver the knight via f3, take also this pawn, and we are fine. But if he takes with the knight instead, we have to take back with our knight. The difference is that one of our advantage before was that our bishop was strong. We had the bishop pair. Instead, in this variation, also black has the bishop pair. So we will not be able to take advantage of the light square weaknesses like before. And we have to play knight here to keep an active piece on the position instead of building a huge center. And also because say we take with the pawn, he will just move his bishop back here on h3, and our position is not so good here, so better to take with the knight. And on bishop here, there is knight f6 with a fork, so this move is not available. And now let's see, now that you know the ideas, let's see the anti-martial lines. Okay, this was the position in which we played c3, allowing black to enter in the martial attack. And why these are the anti-martial lines? If you remember, in the martial attack, the key points for black are the h2 pawn of the dark square bishop and the queen that are threatening mate here. So h3 is made for that purpose. So the h2 pawn will not be a target. The d4 pushing instead is not black to go for a d5 because there is just a deeper e. And the d3 instead is made to give a activity to our pieces that in the previous line by playing c3 we had to play d4 to give a square to our knight or to the bishop. Instead, with d3 we can develop our bishop right away. And the last one, and maybe the most strange one, why is an anti-martial, is a4. One of our problem with the martial attack is the fact that our pieces are not developed. So with a4, you are threatening if black wants to enter in the martial attack. We are threatening to take on a4 on b5 and also to trade a rook. So in this way, we will release a lot of pressure. Because, in a lot of lines, not in the one that I show you because we can sacrifice the rook, but in a lot of lines, the rook on a8 goes on e8, and the rook on f will support the push on the f4 square to ruin the black structure, white structure around the king. So yeah, but if we are able to trade this rook, we will release a lot of pressure, and we will be able to slow down the position and be happy up a pawn. So yeah, this was the video about the martial attack. Let me know if you liked the video. If you did it, feel free to leave a like or subscribe. And if you want, check also my other videos.